If you're reading this, it's already too late for me. I don't know how you found this post, or if you stumbled across it by accident, but I need you to really listen, because what I'm about to tell you isn't a story. It's a warning. There are rules here, rules you can't break, not if you want to survive. I learned that the hard way, and I'm not sure how much time I have left. You think you know what's out there at night? You don't. Not really. You might think the worst thing you'll find at a gas station after midnight is a drunk looking for cigarettes, or maybe some sketchy guy trying to steal gas. That's what I thought too. I took this job because I needed the money, and because I figured it would be easy. Sit behind the counter, scroll on my phone, maybe mop up a spill or two. I thought the scariest thing I'd have to deal with was boredom. But boredom would be a blessing compared to what I've seen. I worked the night shift at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place you only stop at if you're desperate, or lost, or running from something. The kind of place that doesn't show up on most maps. And if you ask the locals for directions, they'll just shake their heads and tell you to keep driving. I should have listened. There are things that come out after dark, things that look like people, but aren't. Things that know your name, your face, your voice. Things that will do anything to get inside. That's why the rules exist. They're not suggestions. They're the only things standing between you and whatever's waiting out there in the dark. I know this sounds crazy. I wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't lived it. But I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing it because someone needs to know. Someone needs to remember the rules, even if I'm not around to remind you. Let me start from the beginning, before the rules, before the things that wear your face. There's a reason no one else wants this job. I didn't know that when I answered the ad, of course. The listing was vague, just overnight attendant needed, remote location, good pay, must be reliable. I figured it was perfect. I was broke, desperate, and convinced that nothing truly bad ever happened in places as boring as this. I was wrong. The gas station sits on the edge of a two-lane highway that stretches through miles of nothing. No houses, no streetlights, just endless blacktop and the occasional battered road sign. During the day, the place almost looks normal. The sun bakes the cracked asphalt, and the pumps glint like they're trying to pretend they're new. Sometimes a family in a minivan will stop for snacks, or a trucker will come in for coffee and a bathroom break. They never stay long. No one ever does. But when the sun goes down, the world changes. The shadows get longer, the silence gets heavier, and the station feels like it's been cut off from the rest of reality. The only light comes from the flickering neon sign and the harsh fluorescence inside. The darkness outside is thick, almost alive, pressing up against the windows like it's waiting for an invitation. I remember my first night. The manager, a guy named Rick, handed me the keys and a battered employee manual. He didn't say much, just told me to lock the doors after midnight and not to answer the phone if it rang more than 3 times. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The regulars are a strange bunch. There's the old woman who comes in every Thursday at 2:17 a.m., always buying the same brand of cigarettes, always paying in exact change. She never speaks, just stares at you with eyes that seem too bright for her wrinkled face. There's the man in the suit who never takes off his sunglasses, even at night, and always asks if we've seen the others. Sometimes, people come in who don't seem quite right, clothes a little too clean, smiles a little too wide, voices that echo in ways they shouldn't. I learned to stop asking questions. Rumors float around, even out here. The last guy who worked the night shift disappeared. Some say he just quit and left town, but others whisper that he was taken. No one ever explains what that means. There are stories about people who stop for gas and are never seen again, about cars found abandoned on the side of the road with the doors wide open and the engine still running. I used to laugh at those stories. Now I keep my own car gassed up and ready, just in case. Daytime at the station is almost peaceful if you ignore the feeling that you're being watched. But at night, the peace is a lie. The customers change. Sometimes they don't even bother pretending to be normal. Sometimes they just stand outside, staring in, waiting for you to make a mistake. It's easy to feel alone out here, like the rest of the world has forgotten you exist. The phone barely works, and the radio only picks up static after midnight. Even the internet is unreliable, cutting out at the worst possible moments. You start to wonder if you're the last person left alive. But it's not the isolation that gets to you. It's the rules. The rules are taped to the wall in the break room, right above the microwave that never quite works. They're written in faded black marker on a sheet of yellowed paper, the corners curling up like they're trying to escape. At first, I thought they were some kind of hazing ritual, a joke left behind by bored employees. But the longer I worked here, the more I realized the rules are the only reason anyone survives the night shift. Rule number 1. Never open the door after midnight, no matter who's knocking. It sounds simple, right? But it's not. Sometimes the knocking is soft, polite, like a lost traveler looking for help. Sometimes it's frantic, desperate, like someone running for their life. And sometimes it sounds like someone you know, a friend, a family member, a voice you'd swear you'd recognize anywhere. That's the trick. The things outside can mimic voices, but they can't come in unless you let them. I've spent hours listening to my mother's voice begging me to open the door, even though she's been dead for years. Rule number 2. If the phone rings more than 3 times, don't answer it. This one almost got me on my second week. The phone rang at 3:07 a.m. 4 times, each ring louder than the last. I picked up, thinking it was Rick checking in. All I heard was static, and then a voice whispering my name over and over, getting closer with every repetition. I hung up, but the whispering didn't stop until sunrise. Now, I unplugged the phone at midnight, just to be safe. Rule number 3. Don't look at the security monitors between 2 o'clock and 2:15 a.m. I learned the hard way what happens if you forget rule number 3. One night, I glanced at the monitors out of habit. The screens showed the station from impossible angles, like the ceiling was melting or the floor was breathing. On one monitor, I saw myself standing behind the counter, but my reflection was smiling, even though I wasn't. For the rest of the night, I kept catching glimpses of that smile in the glass doors, in the reflection of the coffee pot, everywhere. It didn't go away until I covered every reflective surface with paper towels. Rule number 4. If a customer pays in anything other than cash or card, don't accept it. You'd be surprised how many people try to pay with things that aren't money. Teeth, old coins, feathers, even a jar of what looked like human eyes. The first time, I thought it was a prank. I took the payment, and the next morning, I found a dead bird on the counter, its eyes missing. Now, I just shake my head and point to the sign. Cash or card only. Rule number 5. If you hear footsteps on the roof, turn off all the lights and hide under the counter. This one is the hardest to follow, because every instinct tells you to run. The footsteps are heavy, deliberate, and they always stop right above you. I don't know what's up there, and I don't want to find out. I just hold my breath and wait for the sun to rise. Rule number 6. Never, ever go into the bathroom after 3:33 a.m. I don't know what happens if you do. I've never been brave or stupid enough to find out. But sometimes, I hear voices coming from behind the door, whispering secrets in languages I don't understand. The smell of rot seeps out, thick and sweet, and the lights flicker even when the rest of the station is fine. Rule number 7. If you see someone standing at pump 6, don't make eye contact. Don't acknowledge them. Don't even look in their direction. Pump 6 is always broken, but sometimes, in the dead of night, someone will be standing there, staring at the station. They never move, never blink. If you look at them, they'll start walking toward the door. I made that mistake once. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from the pump to the front door, but nothing on the security footage. There are more rules, some even stranger than these. Don't eat anything from the vending machine after midnight. If you find a key on the floor, leave it where it is. If you see a child alone in the parking lot, lock the doors and turn off the lights. Each rule is written in the same shaky handwriting, with little notes in the margins, warnings, reminders, sometimes just a single word: danger. It's easy to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Who writes rules like these? Who actually believes them? But the longer you work here, the more you realize the rules aren't just for your safety, they're for everyone's. Break one, and you might not make it to morning. Or worse, you might make it, but you won't be the same. I thought the rules were a joke until the first night I broke one. The first time it happened, I was still new enough to think the rules were just a weird tradition, a leftover from some long-gone manager with a twisted sense of humor. I'd read them, sure, but I didn't believe them. Not really. I was more worried about running out of coffee or getting stuck with a broken register than anything supernatural. That changed on my third night. It was a little after midnight, and the station was dead quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice every little sound: the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. I was behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, half watching the security monitors, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to. The night had been uneventful. Just a couple of truckers and a woman who bought a single can of soup and left without saying a word. Then I heard it, a knock at the front door. Not loud, not frantic, just a soft, steady tapping, like someone was trying not to wake a sleeping house. I glanced at the clock. 12:17 a.m. My stomach tightened. Rule number 1, never open the door after midnight, no matter who's knocking. I tried to ignore it, but the knocking came again, a little louder this time. I looked up and saw a shadow on the other side of the glass, just out of reach of the flickering porch light. I couldn't make out a face, just the outline of someone small, maybe a kid. My heart started to race. I told myself it was probably just someone who'd gotten lost, maybe a family with car trouble. But then I heard the voice. "Please, let me in. It's cold out here." I froze. The voice was high and thin, trembling with fear. It sounded exactly like my little sister. But she's been dead for years. I felt the blood drain from my face. I hadn't heard her voice since the accident, hadn't let myself think about her in months. But there it was, clear as day, begging me to open the door. I stood up, my legs shaking, and took a step toward the glass. The shadow pressed closer, and I could see the outline of a hand, small and pale, pressed against the window. "Please, it's me. I'm scared. Let me in." Every instinct screamed at me to help, to open the door and pull her inside. But somewhere in the back of my mind, the rule echoed: never open the door after midnight. I forced myself to stop, to look closer. The hand on the glass was wrong too long, the fingers jointed in strange places, the nails sharp and black. The shadow shifted, and for a split second, I saw a face. It looked like my sister, but the eyes were too wide, the mouth too big, the skin stretched tight over something that wasn't bone. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and the voice changed. It dropped the pleading tone, grew deeper, rougher, like something trying to remember how to sound human. "Let me in. I know you can hear me." I shook my head, backing away until I hit the counter. The thing outside started to scratch at the glass, slow and deliberate, leaving long, dark streaks. I grabbed the flashlight from under the register and shined it at the door. The light caught the thing's face, and I watched as its features slid off, like a mask melting in the heat. For a moment, there was nothing but a blank, glistening surface, and then it shifted again, forming a new face, my own. "Let me in," it whispered, my voice echoing back at me. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand there and watch. But I couldn't move. The thing pressed its face against the glass, smearing it with something dark and oily. My eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a cold, crawling sensation in the back of my skull, like it was trying to burrow inside. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. The thing stepped back into the shadows, its face still shifting, flickering between my sister, myself, and a dozen other people I almost recognized. It melted into the darkness, leaving only the greasy handprint on the glass. I stood there for a long time, shaking, trying to convince myself it was a nightmare. But when I finally worked up the courage to check the door, the handprint was still there, and the air smelled like rot and old blood. I didn't sleep that morning. I just sat behind the counter, staring at the rules taped to the wall, reading them over and over until the sun came up. I thought about calling Rick, about quitting on the spot, but I knew I wouldn't. Not yet. I needed answers. I needed to know what was really out there. That was the night I realized the rules were there for a reason. You'd think the worst part of this job would be the things that come scratching at the doors after midnight. But honestly, it's the regulars that get under your skin. Some of them are just people lonely, broken, or a little too eager to talk at 3 in the morning. But others, well, I'm not always sure what they are. Not all monsters wear skins, and not all of them wait outside. There's a guy who comes in every Tuesday, right around 1:30 a.m. He's tall, thin, always wearing a faded blue jacket no matter the season. He never speaks, just slides a pack of gum and a can of energy drink across the counter. He always pays in teeth, never cash. Human teeth, yellowed and chipped, sometimes with the root still attached. The first time, I tried to refuse, but he just stared at me with eyes that looked like they'd never blinked. Now, I just take the teeth and drop them in the jar under the register. Rick told me not to throw them out. It's safer that way, he said, and I didn't ask for details. Then there's the woman with the long gray braid. She comes in every few weeks, always at exactly 3:07 a.m., and buys a single bottle of water. She never looks at me, just keeps her eyes fixed on the floor. The last time, as I handed her the change, she finally spoke. Her voice was dry, like leaves scraping on concrete. "Don't look at the mirrors after 3 a.m., she said. They look back. She left before I could ask what she meant, but that night, I covered every reflective surface in the station. I still do. Some of the regulars are almost normal. There's a trucker named Dave who always brings me a cup of coffee from the diner down the road. He's got a nervous laugh and a habit of glancing over his shoulder, like he's expecting something to follow him inside. "You ever see the lights out on the highway?" he asked me once, voice low. "Don't stop if you do. Just keep driving." I nodded, and he looked relieved, like he'd passed on a secret that might save my life. But not all the customers are so easy to read. Sometimes, people come in who don't seem quite right. Their clothes are too clean, their smiles too wide, their eyes too bright. They ask strange questions. Is it always this empty? Or, do you ever see the children in the parking lot? And they never buy anything. I learned to keep my answers short and my eyes down. One night, a man in a suit leaned across the counter and whispered, "They're watching you, you know. They want to see if you'll break the rules." I didn't sleep that day. The worst, though, are the ones who don't speak at all. They just stand in the aisles, staring at the shelves, unmoving for hours. Sometimes, when I blink, they're gone. Other times, I find things rearranged and stacked in impossible patterns, candy bars spelling out words I don't understand. I stopped trying to fix it. Rick says it's best to leave things the way you find them. It's a strange kind of horror, the way the ordinary blends with the impossible. One minute you're ringing up a soda for a tired traveler. The next you're accepting a handful of teeth from a man who never blinks. The line between normal and nightmare blurs until you can't tell which side you're on. But the worst nights are when the station goes quiet. That's when they come out. I used to think the rules were just a collection of superstitions, a way to keep new hires on their toes. After the night with the thing at the door, I followed them religiously at least for a while. But fear fades, and curiosity is a stubborn thing. It was a slow night, the kind that makes you question if anything strange ever really happened at all, or if your mind just played tricks on you in the dark. I'd been working there for a couple of months, and the weirdness had become routine. The teeth, the silent customers, the faces at the window, I'd learned to live with it. I thought nothing would happen if I bent the rules, just a little. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday, just after 2 a.m. The station was empty, the highway outside silent except for the occasional gust of wind rattling the sign. I was restocking the candy aisle when I remembered rule number 8. Don't eat anything from the vending machine after midnight. It always struck me as the most harmless of the bunch. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Stale chips? Food poisoning? I was hungry, and the sandwich I'd brought from home had gone bad hours ago. The vending machine hummed in the corner, its lights flickering in a way that almost seemed inviting. I hesitated, glancing at the rules taped to the wall. My stomach growled. I told myself it was fine just this once. I fed a crumpled dollar into the slot and pressed the button for a bag of pretzels. The machine whirred, and the bag dropped with a satisfying thunk. I tore it open and popped a pretzel into my mouth. The taste was off, bitter, metallic, like chewing on a penny. I spat it out, cursing under my breath. That's when the lights flickered, and suddenly, I wasn't alone. The air grew cold, sharp enough to sting my skin. The shadows in the corners of the station stretched and twisted, pooling together like spilled ink. I heard footsteps, soft at first, then louder, echoing off the tile floor. I spun around, heart pounding, but the aisles were empty. The security monitors buzzed with static, the images warping and bending as if the cameras were underwater. A low, guttural whisper filled the room, words I couldn't understand, crawling under my skin like ants. The vending machine rattled violently, the glass fogging up from the inside. I backed away, but the shadows followed, slithering across the floor, reaching for my ankles. I stumbled behind the counter, fumbling for the flashlight, but the batteries were dead. The only light came from the flickering neon sign outside, casting everything in sickly green. Then I saw a figure standing by the bathroom door. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. Its skin was the color of old wax, stretched tight over bones that didn't fit. It had no face, just a smooth, blank surface that seemed to ripple and shift in the light. It raised one hand, beckoning me closer with a finger that bent the wrong way. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The thing glided toward me, its feet never touching the ground. The shadows thickened, pressing in from all sides, muffling the sound of my own heartbeat. I pressed myself against the wall, eyes squeezed shut, praying it would go away. The whispering grew louder, a chorus of voices overlapping, some familiar, some not. I heard my own name, over and over, each time in a different voice: my mother, my sister, even Rick. The thing stopped inches from my face. I could feel its breath, cold and damp, on my skin. "Why did you break the rule?" It hissed, the words echoing inside my skull. I forced my eyes open. The thing's face was inches from mine, its surface rippling like water. For a moment, I saw my own reflection staring back at me, eyes wide with terror. Then the face melted away, replaced by a dozen others' faces I'd seen in the station, faces I'd only dreamed about, faces that shouldn't exist. I bolted for the door, slamming into it so hard I saw stars. The thing didn't follow. It just stood there, watching, its head tilting from side to side. The shadows receded, the lights flickered back to life, and the cold vanished as quickly as it had come. I collapsed behind the counter, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. The bag of pretzels lay on the floor, the contents spilled out in a dark, writhing mass that slithered away into the shadows. I didn't try to stop it. When the sun finally rose, the station looked normal again. The vending machine was empty, the security monitors showed nothing but empty aisles, and the rules on the wall were unchanged. But I knew better. I'd seen what happens when you break the rules, even the ones that seem harmless. After that night, I started keeping a journal. I needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. After the vending machine incident, I started writing everything down. At first, it was just a way to keep myself sane, a record of the things I saw, the rules I followed, the nights I survived. But the more I wrote, the more I noticed patterns. The same faces at the same times. The same questions whispered by different mouths. The same rules, but not always in the same order. I kept the journal hidden in the back room, wedged behind a stack of old cleaning supplies. I didn't want anyone to find it, not even Rick. Especially not Rick. Some nights, when the station was quiet and the shadows stayed where they belonged, I'd flip through the pages, looking for answers. That's when I started to notice the things in the margins, messages scrawled in a different handwriting, shaky and desperate. "Don't trust the mirrors. They lie. Ask about the basement. If they let you. Rule number 4 changed last week. What? Help me." I realized I wasn't the first to keep a journal. Someone else had been here before me. Someone who'd seen the same things, maybe worse. Their notes were scattered, half erased, as if they'd tried to remove them, but couldn't quite bring themselves to let go. I started copying the messages, comparing them to my own experiences. Some matched up perfectly. Others hinted at things I hadn't even considered. One night, I noticed something strange about the rules themselves. The handwriting was different on a few of them, sharper, more hurried. I checked my old photos of the break room and realized that rule number 6 used to say, "Never go into the bathroom after 3:33 a.m. Now it read, "Never go into the bathroom after 3:13 a.m. The change was subtle, but it was there. I asked Rick about it, but he just shrugged and said, "The rules are the rules. Don't question them." But I couldn't let it go. I started checking the rules every night, taking pictures, making notes. Sometimes, A rule would disappear for a night, only to return with a new warning or a different number. Once, I found a new rule entirely. If you hear singing from the freezer, cover your ears and count to 30. The next night, it was gone, as if it had never existed. The more I dug, the more I realized the rules weren't just for me. They were for the station itself, a kind of ritual to keep the darkness at bay. But who wrote them? And why did they change? I started asking questions, quietly, carefully. I asked Rick how long he'd worked here. He just laughed and said, "Long enough." I asked about the owners, but he got cagey, said they were old money and didn't like to be bothered. I pressed him, and he finally told me, "They don't come around much. Not since the fire." When I asked about the fire, he changed the subject. One night, I found a key taped to the inside of my locker. No note, no explanation. Just a small, brass key with a tag that read B. I remembered the message in the margin. Ask about the basement. I'd never seen a basement door, but the next night, I noticed a hatch behind the mop bucket in the supply closet. The key fit perfectly, but when I tried to open it, something on the other side pushed back. I heard breathing slow, heavy, not quite human. I locked the hatch and never tried again. The journal became my lifeline, a way to make sense of the chaos. I mapped out the nights, the customers, the rules. I found patterns. Certain faces only appeared on Tuesdays. The footsteps on the roof always came after a new rule appeared. The phone only rang 4 times on nights when the moon was full. But every time I thought I understood, the rules would change, the patterns would break, and I'd be back at square one. Sometimes, I wondered if the owners knew what was happening here, or if they were the ones making it happen. The pay was too good for a job no one wanted. The supplies were always stocked, even when I never saw a delivery truck. The cameras in the back room were always on, even when the power went out everywhere else. There were nights when I thought about quitting, about burning the journal and walking away. But I couldn't. Not when I knew there were others before me, and there would be others after. The rules weren't just for me, they were a warning, a legacy, a desperate attempt to keep the darkness contained. I wasn't the first. I won't be the last. It was a Thursday night, the kind that starts out so ordinary you almost forget where you are. The air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and old cleaning supplies, and the only sound was the hum of the coolers. I'd gotten used to the routine: check the pumps, restock the shelves, keep my head down, and follow the rules. But that night, the rules started to unravel, and so did I. It began with the phone. 3 rings, then a pause, then a 4th, shrill and insistent. I stared at it, frozen. I'd unplugged the phone every night since the whispering, but tonight, it was plugged in. I didn't remember doing it. The ringing drilled into my skull, and I let it go to 6 before it stopped, leaving a static hum in the air that made my skin crawl. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling of wrongness only grew. The lights flickered, shadows stretching and twisting in the corners. I checked the rules in the break room, but the ink was smudged, the words crawling across the page like ants. Rule number 3: don't look at the security monitors between 2 o'clock and 2:15 a.m. was almost unreadable. I glanced at the monitors anyway, just for a second. My own face stared back at me from every camera, each one twisted in a different expression: fear, rage, hunger, grief. One of them smiled, slow and deliberate, and mouthed, "Let me in." I jerked away, heart pounding. The air grew colder, and frost crept across the windows. Then came the footsteps, first on the roof, then in the aisles, then behind the walls. Heavy, dragging, as if something enormous was circling the building, looking for a way in. I locked the doors, double-checked every window, and turned off the lights, just like the rules said. But it didn't matter. They were everywhere, at the windows, the doors, even the vents. Shadows pressed against the glass, faces forming and dissolving, mouths opening in silent screams. I heard voices: my mother, my sister, Rick, even myself, all begging to be let in. "Please, it's cold out here. Please, I'm scared. Please, let me in." I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voices wormed their way inside my head, growing louder, more desperate. The jar on the counter began to rattle, the liquid inside swirling faster and faster. I grabbed it, meaning to throw it outside, but it burned my skin, leaving angry red welts where I touched it. I dropped it, and it rolled under the counter, still pulsing with that sickly light. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Something slammed against the back door, hard enough to rattle the shelves. I hid under the counter, clutching my flashlight, whispering the rules to myself like a mantra. Never open the door after midnight. Don't answer the phone after 3 rings. Don't look at the monitors. Don't accept anything but cash or card. Don't go into the bathroom after 3:13 a.m. Don't look at pump 6. Don't eat from the vending machine. Don't. The power went out. The only light came from the jar, casting long, writhing shadows across the floor. I heard something crawling through the vents, scraping and hissing, its breath hot and wet. The air filled with the stench of rot and burning hair. I tried to stay quiet, but my teeth were chattering so hard I thought they'd shatter. Then, silence. For a moment, I thought it was over. I peeked over the counter and saw the front door standing wide open. The cold night air rushed in, carrying with it the sound of footsteps, hundreds of them, all around me. Figures poured into the station, their faces shifting and melting, their eyes empty and hungry. They moved in jerky, unnatural ways, limbs bending where they shouldn't, mouths opening too wide. I ran for the back room, slamming the door behind me. I wedged a chair under the handle and pressed myself against the far wall, clutching my journal like a talisman. The things outside pounded on the door, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of pleas and threats. Let us in. Let us in. Let us in. I flipped through the journal, searching for anything that might help. In the margins, a message I hadn't noticed before. If they get inside, turn off the lights and hide. Don't breathe. Don't move. Don't think about them. I killed the lights and held my breath, heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. The pounding stopped. The voices faded. I waited, counting the seconds, then the minutes, until the first light of dawn crept through the cracks in the door. When I finally emerged, the station was empty. The jar was gone. The rules were back to normal, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I'd survived the longest night, but not everyone did. Rick didn't show up for his shift. The woman with the braid never came back. The man in the suit was gone, his teeth left in a neat pile by the register. I made it to dawn, but not everyone did. Surviving the longest night didn't feel like victory. It felt like waking up from a nightmare only to realize you're still trapped inside it. The sun rose, the shadows retreated, and the world outside looked almost normal. But nothing was the same. Not for me, not for the station, and not for the people who didn't make it to morning. I still see the scars when I look in the mirror, thin, red welts on my hands where the jar burned me, a streak of white in my hair that wasn't there before. But the worst scars are the ones you can't see. I lose time now. Hours slip away, and I'll find myself standing in the middle of the aisle with no memory of how I got there. Sometimes I wake up at home, the taste of rot in my mouth, my journal open to a page I don't remember writing. The handwriting isn't always mine. Rick never came back. His locker was empty, his name scratched off the schedule. No one talks about him. The woman with the braid is just another ghost story now, a warning whispered between shifts. The man in the suit, well, I still find teeth in the oddest places, tucked behind cans or under the register, as if he's still trying to pay for something he can't buy. I keep the rules close now. I check them every night, photograph them, memorize every word. I don't question them anymore. I don't laugh at the absurdity. If you ever find yourself at a gas station like mine, remember, the rules aren't suggestions. They're the only things standing between you and the things that wait in the dark. Break them, and you might not die. You might wish you had. There are things worse than death out here. Things that wear your face, that whisper with your voice, that remember every mistake you've ever made. They're patient. They watch. They wait for you to slip up, just once. I know how this sounds. I know you're probably thinking I'm crazy, or that I made it all up. I wish I had. I wish I could forget. But every night, when the sun goes down and the shadows start to move, I remember. I remember the faces at the window, the voices in the vents, the rules that change when you're not looking. So if you're reading this, take it as a warning. Don't get curious. Don't get brave. And whatever you do, don't break the rules. But there's one last thing you need to know. I thought I'd seen every rule, memorized every warning, survived every test this place could throw at me. But tonight, when I walked into the break room, something was different. The air felt colder, heavier, like the station itself was holding its breath. The rules sheet was waiting for me, but there was a new line at the bottom, written in fresh, black ink that hadn't been there before. Rule number 13. If you read this, it's already too late. I stared at it, heart pounding, the words burning into my mind. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, snapping a picture, but the screen glitched and went black. I tried to rub the ink away, but it wouldn't smudge. It was as if the rule had always been there, waiting for someone to notice. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's for me, or for you, or for anyone who stumbles across these words. Maybe the rules aren't just for the people who work here. Maybe they're for anyone who learns too much, anyone who gets too close to the truth. Maybe, by reading this, you've already crossed a line you can't uncross. Now you know the rules. Will you follow them? Or will you be the next one to disappear, to leave behind a warning for whoever comes after? The station is quiet now, but I can feel something watching, waiting for me to slip up. The cycle isn't over. The danger isn't gone. It never is. I'll be watching the comments. If you've seen them too, let me know. Maybe we can survive this together. Or maybe, like the rule says, it's already too late.